learning the seichel, as you explained yesterday, seichel mitzat seichel, not because it affects me, but because I pursue real value, not how it affects my reality. So you said that this only can be through the naise beforehand, through connecting through naise before, like when you explained the other day, just the same idea that is not self-centered, but you go out of yourself, right? Or my question is.
That brings you to a higher level of seichel. That's what I explained on Monday.
So my question is, you explained that seichel normally means they are showing me something, they are presenting something to me. So it's not the essence itself, it's just the way it's presented for me. But through the naise, you can get actually to the thing itself. I don't understand exactly how that works, because when you do it, you said like there is a light in the street. Like you don't stop because you want to connect to the person that put a light. You stop because you know a light is important for traffic. But when you do the naise, like you connect to God, like not that you stop because you understand that you have to stop, but because you want to connect to God that He gave you this
Okay,
light.
let's say, in the same analysis, if you stop by the light because you're aware that you want to strengthen the civility of the country, the unity of the country. That's the source of making lights. So let's say if you are aware of the basis, aware that idea originates, then you're relating to the essence.
But why you can relate? That's my question. Why when you go out and you do it?
Because you can relate because you are dedicated to the essence. Nasa means you're dedicated to the essence, and then your seichel lifts up completely.
Because it's not limited to my own person, but to the thing itself.
You're not limited to seichel, not to yourself. You're not limited to seichel. The reality of that present that you see in the seichel is not based because it's seicheldik, but because you relate to the essence of its truth. Okay. All right. We are approximately 9 lines from the bottom. The line begins with Sarum Melech. At the end of that line, agreed? So, no matter how well you know something, if you don't delve into it, that misboining, in full regalia, so to speak, in full description of the Inyan, that it becomes absorbed in your mind and becomes real in your mind, there's not going to be a midah from this. Or k'moi came. Okay, we have the place. And K'moi came, but his spoilers halev be'ava be'yira le'elokus. The similar Inyan is when it comes to the spoilers of touching the heart, with ava or yira to elokus. Shetolui b'hizboinus u'b'gio rabo davka. That it depends in his bonus, and it has to be his bonus. It has to be a deep contemplation, or b'gio rabo davka, with great effort. Yoiser mi b'mila di alma. An effort greater than that which is necessary in mila di alma in worldly matters. The Mamili, the Yalmo, for in worldly matters, Hagam Shenitzra Gamkin Lehisboine. Although that there too you have to reflect and think. Just to know the words, like we discussed yesterday, does not do anything. You have to actually relate to it in your seichel. Betiv hadover, betiv hadover means in the nature of this thing. What is the reality of it? Betiv hadover points out and is a brief reference to the principles that we discussed before in worldly matters. If one says, in simple worldly matters, if one says that a diamond, the value of a diamond is that it can buy 1,000 pounds of bread, he is not relating to a diamond. He's relating to the value of bread. Betiv hadover means that he has to be misboinen in the value, in the intrinsic value of this. So even though that requires his boinus, because it's not something that can be empirically shown, empirically, externally, physically, demonstrated. There's nothing to show. Nevertheless, avol, but still, bo memela, still it comes, memela, it comes automatically. Why? Because when one comes upon something that is good, umoyel, and is beneficial, miyad oila b'machshavto lahar hirbozeh, he immediately begins to think about it. Umispoya b'moichai. What this is saying is, as we have discussed, that there is two stages. There is the moyach and there is the leiv. So for the leiv, we have to do an effort in the mind to bring things to reality. But if somebody even suspects that this thing is good, is beneficial in worldly matters, he doesn't have to convince himself that he should go and think about it. The desire to think about it is automatic. Because the idea that he's going to have something beneficial, even without knowing what it is, immediately entices him to get into it and try to find out. Because he is bound with worldly benefits, with worldly matters, naturally. He doesn't have to convince himself that something that's good in the world is good for him. So that's what it says. That this comes miyad or machshavto lahar hirbozeh. That comes into his thought immediately. Umispoya b'moichai, and therefore in his mind he becomes immediately aroused, affected. And then when ogeya miyad hahispoilus beliboy, and then immediately this hispoilus reaches to the heart. She is spoiled believe berish be'esh hatshuka, that he becomes affected in his heart berish be'esh with a excitement, a fire desire, the dover hahu, a desire to that thing, or the opposite, to separate and to be careful against an evil thing, v'sonui b'machshavto, something that is despised in his mind, he immediately reacts that he should stay away from it. He doesn't have to convince himself, since this is bad, therefore he should stay away from it. Im loy b'shoite v'choser deya. Unless you're talking about a fool or a choser deya, somebody who simply is lacking mind's power, awareness, das. Mm-hmm.
I have a question. Before, when it said the avartev moil means that is health.
Beneficial.
It seems almost like a contradiction, because we're saying that the whole union of toiv is that it's not toiv because it's what it can do for me, but because of its value. And but moil seems to mean like what I can get from it, what it benefits to me.
No. The value is moil. If it makes a person feel better, it gives a certain value to things. That's all part of moil. Everything is moil. I gave an extreme example of a diamond, but everything. Dover table moil, a house. You know, some people, you have to convince them that to own a house is better than to rent. And it's not a question of dollars and cents. It's a question of simply the peace of mind that a person has. It's a different type of life. And this is Pshat Hashanim, a little bit of Choser Deya. He lacks sense. I had a guy in my house. I think I told you there was a man in my house who would fall asleep. Fall asleep. I had somebody in my house many years ago that if you were talking about something, then there was a lull in the discussion, he would fall asleep. And then he had something to say, he would wake up. You know, like, huh?
If he had something to say.
Well, he's finished, right? And if you said something, he would immediately wake up. You know, it's like the voice-activated machine. Yeah. This is how he operated. And this same person, he says, I don't understand, what should you buy books for? Every book is available in the library. I don't see the sense of owning books. It's a logical argument. Right? The practical function of a book is to read it or to learn it. If you can go into the library and borrow any books you want, so what's the point of owning a book? What does our Rebbe say? A house full of a house full of books, full of sforim. What need sforim for? If I need to learn, I'll go and borrow a book in the library.
Buy a Somali library card.
Huh?
Buy a Somali library card.
Right. It's part of a human standing, a stature, that he has sforim. He owns sforim. So I'm saying, im lei b'shoite v'choser das, shein lehergish b'dover hatoiv. He does not have a hergish. A hergish b'dover hatoiv. Hergish means a feel, a sense. If you have an argument, he's very smart and he can understand the point very clearly. This brings this benefit. Then he understands very well.
Is that the same thing as Tam B'Dava?
What?
Is that like similar to the idea of Tam B'Dava? Like a taste in it? You said
Well, Tam could be reason, which is just an external reason, or it could be a taste. If you come out taste, yes, there'll be a hergish. He has no hergish with Dover HaToif. He doesn't have a feel for a good thing.
How do you relate this to the two examples that you brought about a house and like possessing Sodom? It seems like that's what we spoke about in the previous mimer about the Ratzon Shalamayl and the Seichel. Like a person, you could explain to a person, listen, you can get a library card, you don't need to fill up your shelves, you have more open space, you can get whatever book you want, you never have to pay for them, and it's a logical argument, but the Ratzon, it won't allow for it. The Ratzon says, no, for some reason, everything you're saying is right, I can't prove you wrong in any way, but it's better to own them. That's what the Ratzon says.
It's not a chayt,
But
it's not a good thing.
it doesn't seem like it's a matter of seichel.
No. It is. Well, you can.
The kids, they grow up, they see their father has lots of books, it makes them want to have books. There's a lot of reasons.
No. You see,
That's not why the person wants to own the books.
Many reasons.
no, it's not. This is not. This is not in from Rotzen. It's in from Seichel and Das. On the contrary, Rotzen is above the whole thing. Rotzen is not enhanced by owning books. Rotzen is not enhanced by books altogether. Books begin from Seichel. Only the Seichel relates to books.
No, but when we brought the example,
One second. I understand your question. Okay. The Seichel of the person, the real Seichel, is replicating. Everybody know what replicating means?
Copy? Copy?
Bringing out the Rotzen. So it brings out the Rotzen at the lower level, at the practical, the Seichel level, at the definitive level. Definitive means defined level. Rotzen is above that. In the Rotzen, I use terminology which we use in class. In the Rotzen, everybody is a human being in the Rotzen. Seichel is where it becomes conscious that he's a human being. Aware. Aware. He knows. He feels like. He experiences being human. That's Seichel. Rotzen is the essence of being human. Seichel draws from the Rotzen. How am I going to do this? How does a human being supposed to relate to this? How to relate to this? Okay. Now, if we are going to say apply ourselves, attend to the question of either a Sforim. Let's talk about Sforim. In the Rotzoin HaNefesh, Ayid is connected with maybe Hashem.
Just connected.
Connected with Hashem. That's all he knows, that's all he wants. And that's his essence. If this essence, and one second, step back. This essence that he is connected with Hashem, this is not just merely this is what he prefers, what he likes. This is what gives him reality. This is the real thing. This is what makes life worth living. This is the real thing. Then when you bring this down on the Seichel level, so it has to be translated. This same thing is translated at the Seichel level. How does one become, so to speak, wholesome, complete, whole as a human being? When he has, and is surrounded by things that are valuable. That he represents, a situation that is valuable, that is surrounded with Torah and holiness. What does he own in the world? He owns that which is significant, not that which is insignificant. That gives him a sense of who he is at the lower level, the seichel level. Bayis Molish for him defines the house itself. The same thing is in owning a home. Chassidus even talks about this. Odom shein lebayis ein yodom. That a person having a home, this gives him, establishes his place in the world. Why does he need to be in the world? He's doing good things. The answer is that a person in this world, he recognizes that he is here not just to eat potatoes. He is here with a mission. He has a mission. He has to make a mark. He has something to accomplish. And in order to accomplish, the first thing is he has to have a place established. If he is flighty, he doesn't have a place, then he is not a real presence in this world. And not being a real presence in the world, he cannot really affect it. The Rebbe used to live in a rented apartment, believe it or not, on New York Avenue for years. Even when he was Rebbe, for years he was renting an apartment. That's the Babisher's. And then, on Hashem, we got him a house, and the Rebbe moved out, and somebody took over his apartment. So this person took over his apartment. He's really, he's a mechutn of ours. My brother-in-law married into that family. So he was a fine Jew. He went into the Rebbe. He was my Rebbe in Chidus. And he told the Rebbe that he moved into his apartment. So the Rebbe said, I'm very glad. I wanted that Frumer Yid should live in that apartment. He moved out. What does he care what happened to the apartment? He was here while he was living there. And now he moved out. Let it go. The answer is that a person, in the simple sense, we talk about the Rebbe, but a Bardas, he relates the place. This becomes real to him. He's affecting the place where he is. All that is on the Seichel level, on the Das, because this is what connects to the world. Rotzin is above Ishtalshalis.
And so what I don't understand is that we use this idea, you brought the exact same idea from the Gemara, and you said that this is the example of we said in the previous Maimar that you have two types of Ratzin. You have Ratzin which comes the bump in the Seichel, it's Al Pi Seichel, and you have Ratzin which is L'maylam in a Seichel. And you use particularly the example that the need of a human being, that he wants to live in a house, he wants to have his own house, this is a L'maylam in a Seichel. You can't explain it.
This, okay, very good. This is the Rotzen reflected in Seichel. If it's not reflected in Seichel, then he doesn't know about it. It is similar to what we said before, the Nasev and Yishma. This is Seichel, but it's Seichel being affected directly by the Rotzen rather than a Seichel that comes from Mata L'mayla. So this is the Ratzon reflected in the Seichel.
So, I mean, the question is based on the idea here we're talking about when it comes to Milad Da'alma, that a person, if he comes across something which is beneficial to him, and he doesn't feel a heritage that this is something which he should possess, which he should acquire or use, it means he's chasar das. He's not, it's something wrong with the person in such a case.
Right.
So my question was basically when we use the example of the house, now basically what you're saying that this is the seichel reflecting the Ratzon. So this still shows that he's chasar das if he doesn't want to own his own house. Because his seichel is not able to reflect his Ratzon. His Ratzon isn't able to be expressed through his seichel, that even something which is... Okay.
Even Hashem wants to live in a house.
He's got a great one.
Right.
Yeah.
You could say that if a person doesn't have a sense, you could say that if a person does not have a sense of difference between like having his own house and like I don't know, going from place to place, I don't even know what's the other term, but let's see, someone would say, no, if I'm comfortable, I don't care. That really means that he doesn't have any shaykhs to seichel. He's really thinking of his experience. If I have where to sleep, I don't care if it's my house or it's not my house. But all the idea that you explained yesterday, for example, about seichel, is that it's not about, I have what I need, so it's over. It's about having like a true meaning, like having the house means...
Well, that's what he says. Shoyte v'chosar da'ah.
Yeah, but
In Hegel B'davar HaTov.
I don't understand why. What's the point of having like, okay, as opposed to what? You mean to have a house as opposed to buy a house that is mine?
There are different levels. There is, first is to have a place where I can come undisturbed. That could be a rented place, could be a guest. Then there is different levels, and ultimately is to own a piece of, to have the house that you own, and ultimately is to own a place in Yerushalayim. The halacha says, the Gemara says, that every person, every yid has daladamas in Eretz Yisrael. Owns a piece of land in Eretz Yisrael. He doesn't know which one it is, but he owns it.
It's not very big either. But
No, it's not daladamas. That's it. But it's his.
Daladamas was figurative, though.
No, it's halacha, because on that basis we can write a prusbul. You know what a prusbul is?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Prusbul, you have to have land to write a prusbul. Yeah.
How does the Brisbane correspond to the Daladamas?
Because to write a prusbul, you have to own some land.
4 hours of mine is
Huh?
I own a cubicle.
Yeah. All right. Shein le hergish bedover hatoiv. And I want to, alert you to the sinyan that hergish bedover hatoiv is very important. Person has to have a hergish bedover hatoiv. Has to sense the value of a good thing. Even begashmis, certainly beruchmis. I mean, primarily beruchnis. But how does one develop a hergish in ruchnis is by first having a hergish in gashmis. Not about taiva, but you have a hergish for a valuable thing.
This helps with Avodas Hashem.
I'm sorry?
This helps with Avodas Hashem.
It helps to develop one's faculties, one's chushim. The Gemara says, I mentioned it a while ago, I think here, that a teenage to begin to speak has to have tasted tam dogon. Tam dogon, the tam of grain. That has an effect on the brain.
Does that mean tie Like you focus on the material benefits you get from pursuing something religious?
No. No,
And
no.
that you can relate to?
No, I'm talking just the opposite.
Okay.
A person, we have to develop our chushim. Like I said the other day, we have to have a common sense. What's common sense? It's a very important thing that is in great shortage in America. What is common sense? Common sense means something that a person automatically knows. He doesn't have to figure out and argue with it. He has a sense for it. How does one get common sense? He has a sense. He senses the situation. He doesn't figure it out. He senses it. It's real to him. The situation has to be real. If somebody comes in here while we're learning and comes up to any one of us and says, "Hey, can you lend me your cell phone?" What would you think? You think he lacks common sense. He's not doing anything wrong, but it's not common sense. He's not sensing that we're busy doing something. You don't come and disturb somebody in the middle of that, and disturb our class. It's important that we understand the sense of a situation, sense of human life. This is part of hergish b'davar hatov.
It's funny that in English the word sense is the same thing as midah. Common sense, the way it's used. It's the same as what we call midas, no? When you explain the idea of common sense, and we translate the word midah as a sense, right?
Midah is an emotion.
An emotion, it's like senses, right?
No, midah is an excitement.
Huh?
Emotion is an excitement. He spoils. That's not.
So,
Sense is more related to the brain, to the intellect,
you can have
than to the emotion.
spiritual senses,
Spiritual sense. I'm saying this is more related to the
also related
to the mind.
So Chamesh Chushim, it's more related to the mind? See,
Yes.
smell.
So if he doesn't have hergish v'tober hatav, einoi oila b'machshavto yumoichel lahar her bozeh. So by him, he doesn't enter his mind, his thought, to consider it. Because he's not margish the situation. Doesn't mean that he is stupid, practically speaking, not technically. He knows that 1,000 is more than 100. He may even know it better than somebody else, with other sense, who is involved more in the aesthetics, in the intrinsic value of things. But that's what it is. But he doesn't have a sense of the intrinsic value of things. The Gemara says, you may have learned it, that doesn't make any sense, logically. Right? You know what I'm talking, right? Everybody knows?
No.
That a person prefers one measure of his own produce than that which he can purchase, than tenfold he can purchase from others. This is dear to him. What's the difference? This is food and this is food. But it's his. Has a different taste for it.
Is this the same thing? I mean, what we began speaking about cognitive seichel. I mean, a person he's got an intellect. He's not incapable of thinking, but he fails like a child. He fails to realize the real worth of things. He doesn't. You put something valuable in front of him, and it doesn't. He realizes it's good. It doesn't interest him. He doesn't want it. He doesn't have any hergish for it. He wants gashmis rather than ruchnis. He wants a shiny piece of garbage rather than a valuable thing which is not so shiny. It's cotton, isn't it? This is.
Cotton's a seichel?
What's the difference between this and what it makes?
No. Oh, I see what you're saying. No, but they will be talking about cotton's a seichel. He has a hergish, but his hergish is for small things. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
But this is talking about a different aspect. He doesn't have a hergish for things.
Not for anything.
Right. Everything is measured only in a practical way. Like I said, what's the value of a diamond? 1,000 pounds of bread.
Well, just as you just said, that person related wants his own more than 6 of dollars.
I mean,
That the person wants more his own.
Yeah, Gemara, yeah.
The fact that we can relate to that. I mean, but if you cannot explain it, that's how it's supposed to be. That we're
Yeah.
not supposed to understand at all why it is.
right, because it's valuable to him, yes. Right. There was this story of the musician Magid, and he was a child, and there was a sreifa, a fire in town, and a sreifa in those days meant that the house went down to the ground. Baruch Hashem, their whole family was saved. Nobody was hurt. The house went down. Nobody was hurt. So then, after the sreifa, the child, the Magid, saw his mother rummaging in the ashes. And she was looking for something and crying. So he said to him, "Mommy, why are you crying? We're all well. None of one was hurt." So she said, "I had a Sefer Yuchsin. I had a book recording our yichus, ancestry,
A family line.
and now it's all gone in up in frame." So he said to her, "So Mama, so why you don't worry? So you'll start the yichus from me."
And what a yichus it was.
But you sense the difference. The house went down in flames. There's nothing left of their valuables. What was she crying about? The Sefer Yuchsin.
Does that represent like the intrinsic value of
Yeah,
the...
that's irreplaceable. It's real, yes. Okay. V'gam einem mispoil believing. Because he doesn't have the sense, the hergish b'dover hatoi, so he doesn't begin to think about it, and einem mispoil believing. And he doesn't get affected in his heart either. So there are such things in exceptions. Al pi horoi, but in the majority of cases, ono roim, we could see ki b'mile de yalma harehu mispoil mizebe moich. That in worldly matters, one is affected, is touched in his mind immediately. V'hispoilos hamoyach, and this affect and excitement in the mind, poil miyad ha-hispoilos halev. It immediately excites him in the heart to go and pursue it. This is why this Indian is easier, doesn't need that much reflection on his bonus. Omnom ba'avodas havaya, Avodas Hashem, there it's a different. Tzorich higiyot chilo. You first need to effort and labor by his bonus in the very reflection itself. You have to be misboinain to bring it to reality and in his mind to have a sense, oh, how great and valuable this is. And it doesn't happen automatically. If one is misboinen in Elokus, and he says, it's wonderful, this will give me peace of mind, he's missing the point. That's not his bonus in Elokus. That's not appreciating Elokus. Peace of mind, of course, that's a byproduct. But the fact that you have the truth, that your life is for real, that you can relate to something real and true, that is primary. For this, you really have to have his abundance and a lot of labor. V'yachar kach, and then afterwards, he first has to have Igio Rabo, a great effort, she yispoil liboy mehispoilos hanoich, that his heart should further be touched by the hispoilos of the moyach, should be affected by it.
Isn't we say the mind changes, midas change automatically? So why you have to change the? If your mind is mitpael, so midas automatically should be mitpael too, no?
The spoilers of the midas from the moyach. So if his moyach is by his spoilers from Inoleki, you could say since he is mispoiler by Inoleki, so then automatically, quote unquote, so to speak, he will not be drawn to Gashmis because he loses the value, but not necessarily drawn to Olakus because it's distant from him. To want Olakus, to be drawn to Olakus in his heart, he has to really bring it to his heart. Otherwise, he doesn't feel in his heart, in his mind, even if in his mind he does sense its value. But that's on a higher level. Then he should touch him in his heart. It's a separate, completely separate effort.
So in Boinus it's two steps. First of all, you swim to your mind on this part.
Moti?
So in a Boinus it's two steps.
Yeah.
First of all, to mind is mitpar after you working about midah.
That's right.
So what the difference? How you do first and second?
The difference is, generally speaking, that when his bonus in the mind is in the essence of the thing itself, how valuable it is, and the spoilers of the heart is what this will do for me, how this will affect my life. Vehu, and this his bonus, this is Hushahasogo be'elokus tihya be'harchava ve'his pashtus dafka. That the hasogo in elokus will be broad, meaning not just a point, a sharp point, but in full expression, a full expanse. v'hispashtus, and it should spread out. The Hainu, more specifically, how is this? Shehadov or shemasik, bigdulas havaya. That that particular inyan that he comprehends and understands and reflects upon, bigdulas havaya v'nifloisov, in the greatness of Havaya and the miracles and the supremacy, but it comes down in his mind, bebiyur ubehezber, clearly and explained, betam hadvorim al burion, explaining the sense of the inyan al burion clearly lo'oirech u'leroichav, in every direction, length and width. V'loi b'derech kitzur levad, and not just in a brief way. Because if he has it in his mind, okay, let me clarify this. This description that the Rebbe is giving over here, Dover shemasek gdula is b'biyur u'behezber b'tam hadvorim al burion, all that pertains to the hasoga in the mind itself. That's not for the heart. This is the hasoga itself. This is the initial hasoga in the mind. That he is not satisfied, doesn't stop. I'm just saying it's great, but he actually goes into all the details, and he touches on it. You could look up into space and say, oh, it's vast, I don't see the end of it. That will not give you a sense of what you're looking at. If you look into space and you look and you imagine a certain end, you imagine, oh, this is it, and then you say, oh no, it goes further. Oh no, it goes further. Then you begin to recognize what the expanse of space is. If you do not form any kind of graduated levels, then you just have it doesn't have any effect. I think I once, I don't know if here in the other class, somebody wanted to describe the significance of $1 billion. Did I ever tell you this? How do you relate to $1 billion? Right? It's a number, billion, another 3 zeros. So he said, let's say a man takes $1 million, $1 million, puts it in the bank, and says his wife, Blabosta, he says you can spend $1,000 a day on this. This is yours, $1,000 a day, right? So she can go on spending $1,000 a day for approximately 3 years, right? For 3 years, 3 years it won't be exhausted. Let's say the same thing, he put in $1 billion. But he can spend $1,000 a day. How long will it take her to empty the account?
You said something like 300,000 years or something?
3,000 years.
How much is a billion? No, I mean numerically.
What?
A billion is
1,000 million.
1,000 million.
So when you give it a perspective, then you begin to respect the numbers. If you don't have a perspective, so...
Like this you make the chush, you start to feel the difference.
What?
When you think like this, you make
That's
the
right, you
chush.
get into it. Right. You experience it in your mind. So this is, an example of his book, or of understanding something. You can get a grasp. The same thing The same thing is when you're misboinen b'gdulas havaya. Misboinen b'gdulas havaya, you have to get into it. And in detail, they reflect on the greatness that Hashem has demonstrated to us, in the greatness how it's demonstrated in the creation, and in the miraculous in creation, and the beauty of the creation, in the all the effects, but in detail. Then you get to feel what greatness there is. When we sit in this room, we perceive ourselves being part of these four walls. Now, Baruch Hashem, they're pretty sizable. We have room to walk around, but that's all we're aware of. That's the end of the world. But for a person to open his mind and to understand that, what Hashem has created and to relate to Hashem in some real sense, he has to be in his mind to us, right? Someone once wrote to the Rambam, in the Rambam's days, a scholar, a Rav, I don't know exactly, somebody who was like, certainly considered himself of a man of stature. He wrote to the Rambam that he does not say al chet. Doesn't say al chet. You know what al chet is, right? Because how can you stand in front of Hashem on Yom Kippur and lie? I didn't do any of these things. So how can I say al chet? That's why I don't say al chet. So the Rambam wrote back to him. Very, very sharp. The Rambam is usually very accommodating, very loving. But he stood up and he writes to him, you labor means you self-indulgent idiot. He didn't say idiot. If you would know the greatness of the master that you are serving, you would know that you are transgressing on all of these al-chet and then some. And for this thought itself, you'll have to answer for. If you are a scholar and you think you know something, then you're responsible to know Hashem's greatness, not to know your greatness.
That's not great.
And with this approach, it means that you're involved in yourself. You're not even serving the Hashem. You're over on every al-chet. So this is what the Rebbe says, that if he only has in his moyach the kitzur, that's not going to do. B'lei derech kitzur levad. His boldness cannot be derech kitzur. Just a quick glance at the inyan. She'im lo yitfos b'moichoi, for if he will not grasp in his mind rag ha-kitzur, merely the kitzur, only the brief idea. Behavora b'alma. Behavora b'alma means by a cursory look, by just a glance. Lo yispoil klum. He will not be affected at all. Rag only. Shema migdaite b'hasoga zu. When he delves deeply with his mind into this hasod, beharchova v'yispashtus, in full expression of a tuv tam, and then furthermore, he explains it to himself very well. He presents it to himself. He reflects on it. If one reflects in the simple thing that we always talk about, the sun rising and the sun setting, and how perfectly organized this is, and how beautiful this is that creates day and night, and provides for every variation of life's experiences, the Tuf Tam, then he knows what he's talking about. Then he will realize that there is something great and extraordinary in the creation. So that in his mind, first of all, he has a good grasp of the inyan. And then he is mispoil in his mind betiv hadover, in the value and the quality of the inyan that he is reflecting on. Ukmoisha kosuv, and as the posuk says, ta'amu ureu ki toiv havai. Ta'amu means taste. Ureu, and then you will see ki toiv havaya, that havaya is good. Every person can always reflect and point out to something that he is missing. Some shortage, something that if he wants to, he can become unhappy about. Every person can find something to become unhappy about. And then this clouds the great riches that he is provided. And he is provided by Hashem, intending for him to appreciate, intending for him to experience it. So he reflects on the greatness of Hashem that Hashem has given him for him to experience. This experience, this greatness, it doesn't make him a great person. It doesn't give him any covet, and it doesn't give him any money. But it gives him life. It gives him a meaningful experience, a meaningful presence. And what is greater than that? So this is what it says, Ta'amur ukitei vavaya. We are preoccupied with things that we can complain about. And the Rebbe should help, we should have nothing to complain about. But we have to understand, besides, I'm not giving any musar, I'm just pointing out that everything that we have to complain about is there intentional for us to outgrow it and to become more mentioned. It's all for our benefit ultimately. But put that aside. Even at the moment, while we are still struggling, we mustn't lose sight of life itself. A man has a family, and he has to provide for them financially. Let's say, Baruch Hashem, everybody is healthy and well, and I'm neighbors. But he has to provide, he has to pay rent, he has to bring milk on the table and shoes for the kids. And he's running around, he's borrowing from this one and paying to this one, and he's maneuvering, he's constantly, let's say he has to make things happen, manage out of, and sometimes he's worried, how am I going to cover the mortgage? Now, yeah, it's a big problem. Ask this man, would you rather not have had all these responsibilities? Then you wouldn't have to pay the mortgage. right? You're running around to pay the mortgage because you have a house full of kids and you have to pay for their tuition and all that. Yeah, what would you rather? There's no chas v'shalom. I mean, this is my real life. This is the real thing. This is all trivialities in comparison to having a real life. So, in a similar fashion, every person, we're all exposed to the greatness of life, the greatness of the neighbors. And we mustn't be blinded by personal concerns. Of course, we have to be concerned, we have to take care of it, not be, neglectful and all that, but not that this should cloud our lives itself. We have to know where the reality is and what needs to be taken care of. If you have a real life, then on the contrary, then you're much more sensitive to what needs to be done. But you're sensitive, that's living. If you're not sensitive, or we have nothing to be sensitive about, that's tragic. I remember that I was working in an office, and sometimes we had meetings. Sometimes the meetings would go beyond the time that you would normally go home. So there were people there. We have to, decided we have to extend the meeting another hour. We can go. So the first thing people do would go and call home and say, "I'll be home. I'll be late. Don't worry, I'll be home late." There were those who had nobody to call. They had nothing to worry about. Right? They didn't have to excuse themselves, they had to explain themselves, they had nothing to worry about. There's nobody home waiting for them. So, would you exchange the worry about being waited on for to explain yourself for not having to worry about it and not having anybody to call? It was clear that that this is the real thing. And this little worry that you have is insignificant in comparison to what you really have, what your life is. Okay, let's just establish where we are. Okay. Ta'amuru Gitei Mavaya, that's where we finish.
Right. Can you explain me what's the difference between Achava and Oirech and Loichet? He says Be'oirech and Loichet. I never understood this concept.
Well, I'll try to explain. In general, Oirech, just like if you're on the road, Oirech is where the road is leading, further and further. Orechev is how broad it is, what that road covers. You understand?
It's more deep, let's say. Loichet is like more getting into each detail. And
That's right. Right. And Oirech is the extension of it.
And Amaka is when it becomes comes down deeper into
Which?
the person. Amaka is when depth.
Amkos. Amkos, Hamaka has to do with, in Seichel also there's Hamaka, but generally Hamaka means that your mind is engrossed in it. I said lately that the best way to think of it means submerged. In other words, you're not thinking of anything else, you're just focusing completely on this thing. That's been Hamaka.
It's like being outside the room through the window and from inside.
That's right.
Mr. Jacobson wants someone was here and he gave similar yesterday next to him when they got off the plane. They were still talking to them. Said, "Excuse me one moment, I have to call my wife and let her know that we've landed." So the guy said that he was speaking to said, "Oh, I don't have anyone to call. I'm free."
Right.
So he said this is like the Goyish idea of freedom.
Right.
And the Jews, we constantly have to call in, we have to check in with Hashem. Someone cares. This is what the idea is. Someone cares about you. You're not free if no one cares about you. It's just a sad position to be in.
Well, you are free, but you're nowhere.
You're free, but you're nowhere. You're free to be alone.
I asked you before, but I didn't want to stop the class again for that. Here where it says
Where to learn
That's intrinsically valuable.
No, but isn't that like...
It's also
like what
moil,
some
but
kids
it's
doing
moil
with
in a
baseball?
different way.
How long?
It's not moil to your
Yeah,
belly.
3/4 or 2/3?
It's moil to your
6-7 hours.
Yeah.
sense of pride, sense of value. It's also moil.
it's worth being alive in order to have valuable things that have a value in themselves. Like
Yeah, well, going to now that's too much. But the point is, it is moil. It gives just like in human terms, it's like this. There is, food.
You want any scars on it?
And then there's COVID. COVID is something which is on a high and on a more refined level. COVID. I mean, clearly we're not talking about stupid
I
COVID.
understand. I want to tell you something. So, I just tell you, can I tell you something?